Okay, welcome in. I know I've been doing a lot of careers for hockey players, and one thing I've really wanted to try to dive into was following football players as well. Now, there's so many that I could do, but I feel that it's going to be more like close to home, and like because I'm a Denver Broncos fan, I'm more than likely going to be having a few reviews on certain players and coaches, whatever it is you want to name it. So um, I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't the biggest Peyton Manning fan back in the early 2000s because, again, I always played for Denver. I always cheered for Denver. And he beat out Denver a few times in the couple of wild card rounds that we did face. And the closest that Denver came to playing the Colts at home in a playoff game would have been in the 2005 2006 season, but unfortunately, the Colts were upset by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then obviously Pittsburgh went into Denver and defeated the Steelers. So, had Indy won that, I'm pretty sure Denver would have had to go into Indy to play them, and I still think it would have been a heck of a game, and that probably would have been the closest that we would have had a chance to beating them. But unfortunately, you can't go back in time and reflect on the what ifs. So I will get into his stats, and then I just do have a have one thing I want to talk about when his break between the Colts and the Broncos when that happened. So he was born on March 24th, 1976. He went to the University of Tennessee. He was the first round pick in 1998 overall by the Indianapolis Colts. You can see his career stats. Um, he finished with 71,940 yards, 539 touchdowns, and 251 interceptions. So his rookie year with the Indianapolis Colts, 1998. Let's see if I can tilt this up. Hopefully it's not too out of focus. Come on now. Work. There we go. Perfect. Just had to do a little adjusting. So his rookie season in 1998, he played all 16 games. He would finish with 326 completions on 575 attempts, a 56.7 completion percentage. He'd finish the year with 3,739 yards, averaging about 6.5 yards per throw, and 26 touchdowns to 28 interceptions. And I'm pretty sure that is still a record that is yet to be broken. And that every year that there's a new draft class, Peyton Manning's always joking, saying, "Is this the year somebody's going to finally break my rookie record?" I guess not. The longest throw he had was 78 yards. He did take 22 sacks, and I'm not too worried about the rest of those stats. His sophomore season, again, all 16 games played, 331 completions on 533 attempts for a 62.1 completion percentage, so he had a 6% improvement. He also had more passing yards, 4,135 yards. He would average just around 7.8 yards a throw, 26 touchdowns for the second year in a row, but his interceptions came down by 13. He had 15 in his sophomore year. Longest was 80 yards, and he took 14 sacks, so he did a pretty decent sophomore year. And I scrolled up by mistake. That's my bad. In the 2000-2001 season, he played all 16 games yet again. He would finish with 357 completions on 571 attempts, a 62.5 completion percentage, 4,413 yards, so better numbers. He would average about 7.7 yards per attempt, 33 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions, so his highest career touchdowns total to that point. And in 2 years, he threw 30 interceptions compared to his rookie year when he almost threw 30. So he had his 78 yards was his longest yet again, and he took 20 sacks in his third year of football. In the 2001 season, he played all 16 games yet again, finishing 343 of 547 attempts, 62.7 what would be his completion percentage. He would finish with 4,131 yards, 7.6 would be his average distance per throw, 26 touchdowns to 23 interceptions, so not that great. 86 yards would be the longest of his longest throw that he completed that particular season, and he finished with 29 sacks. 2002, again, all 16 games played. He would finish with 392 completions on 591 attempts, a 66.3 completion percentage. He would finish with exactly 4,200 yards. 7.1 would be his average throw. 27 touchdowns to 19 interceptions. 69 yards would be his longest throw of the year, and he finished with 23 sacks. So now in 2003, I believe, yep, all 16 games played yet again, 379 completions on 566 attempts. 67% would be his completion percentage. He'd finish with 4,267 yards, which was a career high at that point, 7.5 yards per attempt. 29 touchdowns to 10 picks. 79 yards would be the longest pass, and 18 interceptions. So a pretty decent fifth year in the league, or sixth year in the league. In 2004, again, all 16 games played, 336 completions on 497 attempts, a 67.6 completion percentage rate. That was his highest to date. 4,557 yards he finished with, 9.2 average yards per throw, which was an improvement. 49 touchdowns to 10 picks. So I'm pretty sure that was an MVP year, if I'm not mistaken. Very impressive. 80 yards was his longest throw, and only 13 sacks taken that year. So that's not too shabby. Where was I at? 13. So that was 2004. 2005. Again, all 16 games played, 305 completions on 453 attempts, a 67.3 percentage completion, 3,747 yards, 8.3 average yards per throw, 28 touchdowns to 10 picks, 88 yards was his longest, and 17 sacks is what he'd finished the year with. 2006, 2007 would be a very special year for Indy, but I will talk about that when I do the playoffs. All 16 games played, 362 completions on 557 attempts, a completion percentage of 65% exactly, 4,397 completion yards, 7.9 yards per carry, I apologize, per throw, and 31 touchdowns to 9 picks. 68 yards would be the longest throw, and he took 14 sacks that season. 2007, 2008, again, all 16 games played. He finished with 337 completions on 515 attempts. 65.4 would be his completion percentage. He finished with 4,040 yards, 7.8 yards per throw, 31 touchdowns to 14 picks, so almost a 2-to-1 ratio. 73 yards would be the longest throw of his season, and he took 21. So he had a hard time staying on his feet. 2008, again, all 16 games played, 371 completed passes on 555 attempts, a 66.8 completion percentage, 4,002 yards, 7.2 yards per throw, 27 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, 75 yards would be the longest throw, and 14 sacks he took in 2008. 2009, again, all 16 games played, 393 completions on 571 attempts, a 68.8 completion percentage, which was his best, I believe, ever. Or I guess he tied his 2009 completion percentage. He finished with 4,500 yards, 7.9 yards per throw, 33 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, so roughly a 2-to-1 ratio. 80 yards would be his longest completion, and he only took 10 sacks. I'm pretty sure Indy went to the Super Bowl in 2009-10 as well. In 2010, 16 games played, 450 completions, which was his career high at that point, on 679 attempts, a 66.3 completion percentage. He finished with exactly 4,700 yards, 6.9 yards per throw, 33 touchdowns to 17 interceptions, so roughly a 2-to-1 ratio. 73 yards would be the longest throw he would throw and catch, and 16 sacks that season, so roughly a sack a game. So after the 2010 season, Manning had to go in for 4 surgeries, if I'm not mistaken, for his neck. Now, there's 2 different sides of the story. The Colts may have been misinformed, or they said, signing or getting him back would be a huge risk. If it works out, it'd be a huge reward. So it was like a high risk, high reward move if Indy were to try to bring him back for the 2012-13 season, considering he had to sit out the entire 2011-2012. I apologize. He missed that entire season because of his neck surgeries. So when they were guaranteed the first round pick, Andrew Luck was at the helm. I'm pretty sure, or they had the number 2 picks. I think RG3. Either RG3 or Andrew Luck. One of those 2 guys went number 1 in 2012. I want to say it was Andrew Luck. So they were basically told, hey, if you can let Manning go, He can choose whatever he wants to do. And then this way we have Andrew Luck coming in here, and he ended up being very good for the team. I'm not going to deny that, but just the fact that Manning, I feel like felt like he was just kind of like thrown, just kicked out of Indy, if that makes any sense. So I'm pretty sure he had a little chip on his shoulder, wanting to prove that his neck is okay. And just the fact that he signed with Denver in that offseason was crazy big, because we had Tim Tebow after the 2011-2012 season, where we won one playoff game and lost to the Patriots in the divisional round. And then the fact that Manning was available, I'm pretty sure there was like 3 or 4 teams that had an interest. I know Miami and Tennessee, I think, were in the mix, but the fact that Denver was able to persuade him to stay for 4 years in Denver was absolutely insane. And his second year in Denver, he'd have a breakout season. I'll break that down in just one moment. Okay, so his first year in Denver, the 2012-13 season, he played all 16 games, finishing with 400 completed passes on 583 attempts, a 68.6 completion percentage, 4,659 yards, 8 yards per throw, 37 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. That's like over 3-1 for that ratio. 71 yards would be the longest completion he had, and he actually finished with 21 sacks. So that may have been one of the few seasons that he had 20 plus sacks on him. 2013-14, again, all 16 games played, 450 completed passes, which was a career high, on 659 attempts, a 68.3 completion percentage. His first 5,000 yard season, 5,477 yards, 8.3 yards per throw, and he finished with a crazy stat, 55 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. That's a 5-1 ratio. A crazy year. 78 yards would be his longest throw, and he took 18 sacks that season. The only reason Manning did not win the MVP was because Adrian Peterson came back, and he got the MVP that season. But I guarantee if it wasn't for Manning did get the MVP in 2013. I'm thinking of 2012. That's my bad. Because 2012, Peyton Manning got the Comeback Player of the Year award, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm pretty sure he finished with at least 4 MVPs, if I'm not mistaken, on that as well, throughout his tenure. 2014-15, 16 games played, 395 completions on 597 attempts, a 66.2 completion percentage. He finished with 4,727 yards that season, 7.9 yards per throw, 39 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. So just over a 2-1 ratio, almost a 3-1, but not quite. 86 yards would be the longest throw he completed that season, tying his 2001 record. And he took 17 sacks. Now, his last year in Denver was very definitely disappointing. He got injured just over halfway through the season, or around the halfway mark. And I'm pretty sure it was like a planter's foot or something like that. It's a weird name. So he was essentially out for 6 games. Brock Osweiler took over the helm towards the end of the season. Manning would come back in their Week 17 matchup against the then San Diego Chargers, and then obviously he helped Denver propel themselves to yet another Super Bowl run. So he only played 10 games that season, finishing with 198 completions on 331 attempts. I'm pretty sure that was his lowest completion and attempts. 59.8 would be his completion percentage. So you can just tell his stats weren't that great in his last year. 2,249 yards, 6.8 yards per throw. So he had a really hard time throwing the ball, and he had 9 touchdowns to 17 interceptions. A very terrible touchdown to interception ratio. And I think that was the first time since his rookie year he had more picks than touchdowns. 75 yards would be the longest throw. And even though he didn't play 16 games, he still took 16 sacks. So not that great. So in 266 regular season games, he finished with 6,125 passing yards on 9,380 attempts, at overall 65.3 completion percentage. He had 71,940 yards passing. He would average about 7.7 yards per throw, and he had 539 touchdowns to 251 interceptions. 86 would roughly be his average for his length of his throw. And he had 303 total sacks. Not that great. Okay, so now you saw his passing totals. Now take a look at his rushing totals. This probably won't take as long. So he has his rushing totals for all Indy and his 4 years in Denver. So I'm just going to skip the. He played all 16 games for all those seasons except for his last one in Denver. So his first one in Indy, he had 15 carries on 62 yards, no touchdowns, 5 fumbles. What's FD stand for? Let's take a look at this thing on the bottom. FD. Rushing first downs. First downs. Okay. Let me scroll back up. Okay, so FD. Anyways, he had no fumbles, none lost. It's the second year, 35 carries, 73 yards. He had 8 first downs, 5. Okay, so he had 5 first downs in his first year, 8 first downs in the second. He had 5 fumbles and he lost 2 of them. In 2000, he finished with 37 carries on 116 yards, 1 touchdown. 14 yards would be the longest run of that attempt. He got 10 first downs on those and 1 fumble lost. Sorry, 1 fumble and 1 lost fumble. So basically, he fumbled and lost the ball. 2001, there we go. 35 attempts, 157 yards, 4 touchdowns. His longest yard would be 33. That's 33 yards. That's crazy. 9 first downs, 3 fumbles, and 1 lost. 2002, I believe. It's 38 carries on 148 yards, 2 touchdowns. His longest would be 13 yards, 11 first downs, and 1 fumble. But they got it back. 2003. I'm all over the place here. 28 carries, 26 yards. He had 3 first downs, 4 fumbles. 2004, 25 carries, 38 yards. 19 was his longest yards per run. He had 4 first downs and 1 fumble and 1 lost fumble. All right. So where are we now? 2005 now. 33 rushing yards, 33 carries and 45 yards. So the guy wasn't that mobile of a quarterback, but at that time in the 90s, early 2000s, it was really scarce or rare, unless you were like Michael Vick, to have crazy stats or a lot of yards. There's really no point going through all of the rushing, but I mean, I'm kind of into the video now. So 2004, 25 carries, 38 yards. 2005, 33 carries, 45 yards. No touchdowns any of those seasons. 2006, 23 carries, 36 yards. He had 4 touchdowns that year. In 2007, he had 20 carries for -5 yards and 3 touchdowns. That means he definitely took a lot of knees, or he just ran the wrong way. Because like, how often do you see someone finishing with -5 yards and 4 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns? That's pretty odd. 2008, 20 carries, 21 yards. He had a touchdown. 2009, 19 carries, -13, no touchdowns. Okay, at least that makes sense. 2010, 18 carries, 18 yards, no touchdowns. 2012, his first year in Denver, 23 carries, 6 yards, no touchdowns. 2013, he had 32 rushing attempts on -31 yards and a touchdown. So there's definitely a QB sneak somewhere in that mix. 2014, 24 carries, -24 yards, no touchdowns. His last year in Denver, 6 carries, -6 yards, no touchdowns. So he didn't have the best stats when it came to that particular one. So 431 rushing attempts, he finished with 667 yards. It's crazy to think that if it wasn't for his 2000 to like 2002 outburst, he could have finished with negative numbers. He really could have. He finished with 18 touchdowns, which is pretty impressive for a quarterback who didn't run it that much. The only season where he caught the ball was in 2003, 16 games played, 1 catch for -2 yards. So he went backwards. Then it does show his defense, but that just means if there was a turnover, he would tackle the other guy. He finished with 9 total tackles in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons that he had to. He had 1 fumble recovery, so again, nothing too crazy. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at the regular season, I'll take a look at the postseason stats now. So again, he played from 98 till 2015, so that's roughly a 16-year or 17-year career. But there were 2 times that he missed the playoffs. Sorry, 3 times he missed the playoffs. his rookie year, 2000, 2001, and then obviously the 2011, 2012 when he didn't play at all. So his first year that he made the postseason with the Colts, one game played, he finished with 19 completions on 42 attempts, 227 yards, no touchdowns, and no picks. One game in 2000, he had 17 completions on 32 attempts, finished with a 53.1 passer completion percentage, 194 yards, one touchdown, no picks. 2002, one game played, 14 attempts on 31 yards, 137 yards was his total, and no touchdowns to 2 interceptions. 2003, he played 3 games that year, so they played a wild card round, a divisional round, and then I'm pretty sure they played the Patriots in the championship game. 67 completions on 103 attempts on that postseason run, and he finished with 9 touchdowns to 4 picks. So pretty good numbers, but unfortunately, during that tenure, the Patriots were the team to beat in the AFC. 2004, I'm pretty sure they played a wild card round and then a divisional round, 2 games played, 54 completions on 75 attempts, a 72 completion percentage, and he finished with 4 touchdowns and 2 picks. 2005, just the one game, as I've talked about before, they played a divisional round against the Steelers, and unfortunately they lost that game. He finished with 22 completed passes on 38 attempts, a 57.9 completion percentage, and 1 touchdown to no picks. 2006 would be a very special year. They played in the wild card round, the divisional round, the championship round, and then they played in the Super Bowl. 4 games played that postseason run, 97 completed passes on 153 attempts, 63.4 would be his completion percentage. And the crazy thing is, he had 3 touchdowns and 7 picks in those 4 games, and they still managed to win. It's not too often you throw 7 picks and you win all 4 of those games. So Indy would claim their first title as the Indianapolis Colts. Prior to that, they were the Baltimore Colts back in like the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. 2007, 2008, just one game played, 33 completed passes on 48 attempts, a 68.8 completion percentage. He had 402 yards and 3 touchdowns to 2 picks. So he had a better postseason the year after their Super Bowl run. 2008, 2009, one game played, 25 completed passes on 42 attempts, a 59.5 completion percentage, 310 yards, and 1 touchdown to no picks. 2009, they would go on to the Super Bowl. They would win their divisional matchup, they'd win their championship game, then they played the New Orleans Saints. Unfortunately, they would lose to the Saints in that Super Bowl game. But in the 3 games that he played, he was 87 of 128, 68 completion percentage, and he had 6 touchdowns to 2 picks. So at least he didn't have his touchdown interception ratio the other way around. 2010 would be the last game that Indy would play. I'm pretty sure they played a divisional match against the Jets and lost. So we only had one game that year, 18 completed passes on 26 attempts, 225 yards, and he had 1 touchdown to no picks. So he didn't have that bad of a game. It just came down to the Jets had the last possession and they kicked the game-winning field goal. So as I said before, in 2011, 2012, Peyton Manning did not play that year. He would have to wait until the following season to play in the postseason in his first game with Denver. Unfortunately, they would lose. They would lose to the Baltimore Ravens. He had 1 game played, 20-43. He had 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, and the second interception really killed them because I'm pretty sure that was in the overtime period of their playoff game, and then Justin Tucker ended up winning it in the second overtime. 2013-14, they play 3 games that year, a divisional matchup, a championship game, and then the Super Bowl. So 3 games, he had 91 completed passes on 128 attempts, 910 yards, by far his best since 2006, 5 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Unfortunately, Denver got blown out by the Legion of Boom and the Seattle Seahawks. I'm pretty sure it was like 43-8. Or 43-9. It wasn't even close. 2014, 1 game played. They would play Peyton Manning's former team in the Indianapolis Colts and Andrew Luck. He finished that game with 26 completed passes on 46 attempts. And I don't know what I just pressed there. Let's see if I can go back. Yeah, so 26 completed passes on 46 attempts. 56.5 would be his completion percentage. And he had 1 touchdown in the game. No picks, 32 yards would be his longest pass. And then his last ride with the Broncos was in the 2015-16 season. he played in the divisional round, the championship game, and then the Super Bowl. So in 3 games, he would finish 51. He would go 51 of 92, 539 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And I'm pretty sure he had a pick in it, at least 1 interception in all 4 Super Bowl appearances that he appeared in. So he went 2 for 2, lost 2, won 2. So he finished with 27 playoff games played. 649 of 1,027 would be his passing completion to passing attempts. A 63.2 completion percentage. He finished with 7,339 playoff passing yards and 40 touchdowns to 25 interceptions, and 87 yards would be his longest pass, and that was back in the 2003 postseason. All right, let's take a look at some rushing stats as well. With the Colts, in his first playoff game, he had 3 carries for 22 yards. In his second game, he had 1 carry for -2 yards, was more than likely just a kneel down. In 2002, 1 carry for 2 yards. In 2003, 4 carries for 3 yards. 2004, he had 2 carries for 8 yards. 2006, their playoff run, 8 carries for 3 yards. 2007, he had 1 carry for -6, so he went the wrong way in that game. 2008, 1 carry for -1 yards. 2009, 3 carries for -2 yards. And in his 1 game in 2012 at Denver, 1 carry, -1 yard. 2013, 3 carries for -2 yards. And 2015, he finally got back to the positive side. He had 5 carries on 10 yards. So he finished with 33 carries and 34 yards. That sounds about right. And 3 rushing touchdowns. He had 4 first downs on all of those attempts. He finished with 4 fumbles, and he lost 2 of them. So fumbling seemed to be a pretty common thing, unfortunately, for Manning whenever he did play. All right, there's no point going on to a lot more because I feel like I've already shown more than enough than I really needed to. There we go. Got a picture of the sheriff right there. So I do plan on doing more of these videos because there's such a long off season for the NFL. And if anyone likes this type of content, write down below in the comments who you'd like me to take a look at next. If you want me to talk more about a certain player, I can certainly look at more of their stats. I'm sure there's all sorts of awards and stuff that he has won. I just didn't have a chance to look it up or review it. And then the 4 neck surgeries, I wanted to put that in there, but unfortunately I forgot. So again, this is just new stuff, new territory for me. I figured why not give it a try, and we'll see what happens from here. All right, as always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative at the same time. Until next time, and as always, take care.